Hello, friends. So I've got a wonderful card that I've made, and I've done it with two different products, and I wanted to show you the difference. So in the past, I've done scene stamping for super long time, years and years, and my favorite thing to use has always been the distress markers. Okay, I just love these ones, but they are discontinuing them and they are dried out. Some of them I have re-inkers for, but I don't have re-inkers for the dozens of colors. So I'm pretty much at the point where I can barely use a lot of the colors because they're dried up. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? Because I love this scene stamping technique. And so I went to Michael's yesterday and I used my coupon, hallelujah, and I purchased these markers. Double-ended watercolor brush pens by Steadtler. So I gave them a try and I wanted to show you how fantastic that they are. I was super impressed with them and they work very, very well for this technique. So I haven't used them to do coloring. I still have my Copics and would probably choose my Copics to do intricate coloring. But for this technique, I need something that is not alcohol based, but is water based that won't dry really quickly. And so for this technique, these pens are fantastic. This card here was done with these pens. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So here I've got the stamp set that I've used. It is a penny black slapstick cling and it's called Traverse, and just love it. So I'm using that stamp, and then I'm also using my Stamp Perfect by Hampton Arts. Now I have the original mini Misty. Absolutely love, love, love the Misty, but it is a bit small when I'm working with a stamp like this that's a little bigger. And so my sweet husband got me this for Christmas. So what I do is I cut my card front, and so I've got this card front, actually I did is 4 1/4 by 6, okay? And so it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to trim it down afterwards. So I'll trim down the sides and around it. But to get it started, to get the stamp onto it, I like to do the full piece, and then I can trim it, okay? So I've taken my stamp and I've placed it onto the cover, and I've got it in the exact place of where I want it to go, okay? So now I'm going to take it, open it up, and I like to start with the trees. So I'm going to just choose some colors out of here. I'm going to choose a few different greens, okay? So I'm using the brush tip. And so there's a brush tip and then there's a fine tip. And so I'm using the brush, and I like to just start by using my pen kind of on an angle, and I just basically color the stamp, okay? So these are nice and fresh. And so because the markers are so fresh, I can actually do all of these trees. Right now, when my markers start going dry, I have to do like a little bit and then stamp it, and a little bit and a stamp it. But because these markers are so new and fresh, I can do all of these trees. So I'm just basically coloring it in with the marker. And so I try not to get like real distinct marker lines because it will show up when I stamp it. Okay, so now I'm going to take the lid and close it onto my cardstock. Give it a good push and open it back up. So there you can see the first one. Now I keep a baby wipe handy, okay, because what I do is I just give that a real light wipe. I just wipe that off just very, very lightly. I'm not pushing very hard on it, but just give it a little bit of a clean. Okay, and then I'm going to go on to my second color. So now for this one, I'm going to come along the bottom, and I'm going to come along the edges. And again, I'm using the side of the pen and just kind of brushing it on. So I'm going to just do it in a few places, kind of get my tips, kind of add some contrast in a few spots. It's not complicated, it's not fancy. Now, if I've got a lot of line marks going on, I just take my finger and I just kind of dab in to a few places and kind of soften out those edges, and then stamp. Now, I found with this, because it's a larger stamp stamping positioning tool that sometimes it shifts. So I just kind of keep grabbing it here and making sure that this is really lined up as I stamp so that the image doesn't shift at all. And then I always push the cardstock into this corner again to make sure that it's nice and straight there, and that my image won't shift so that it gets blurry. Because if it gets that blurry shifted look, it's basically garbage and you got to start over, right? So I've got two different colors on there. Like, look at the dimension already. Hey, it's so cool. So I'm going to use a third color here. The colors with these ones, like, they don't actually name the colors. Like, there's no name on here, so I can't really tell you the ones that I'm using, but it's the as I showed, is the Steadtler multi-pack that I'm using. Okay, so I'm going to add just a bit of this green. I'm going to put a little bit down here. I just kind of want a shadow. Okay, so tap it off a little bit so that there's not distinct marks. Make sure my paper is in the corner and stamp. All right, so loving that, so loving that. So I think I'm pretty much done my trees. Now, if I see somewhere where I think, oh, I just need a little bit more. So here in this tree, I might think, okay, so, you know, it's a little bit light right there. I'd like a little more contrast. So what I want to do is just look at it. Okay, it's this tree right here. So I'm going to keep track, and then I'm just going to add just a little bit more green in here. Okay, and stamp that off, making sure it's lined up at the top. Okay, that's great. Hey, not so much yellow, the yellow-green color. And actually, I'm going to do the same thing up here. It just needs a little bit more green up there. Just like to add that definition. It's so easy because it makes it look like it was hand painted, right? And that's what we're going for. Oh, see how perfect that is. Okay, so my stamp grabbed the paper, so I gotta make sure it goes back into that corner. And that's the beauty of using these stamping tools, because you just keep pushing the paper back into the corner and it always lines up. As long as you never shift your stamp and you don't put your paper in a different spot. Okay, so there's the trees. Trees are done. So now I like to go to the water. So right here, there's a little bit of a bridge and there's this little bit of water. So again, just using the side of my brush. So what I do for the water is I start out with a light blue and I just do the whole kind of watery image with that light blue. Line up here. Stamp, okay, beautiful. Now I'm going to take a darker blue, just give that a little bit of a wipe. Take a darker blue, and now I'm not going to go over the whole area. I'm using the edge of my marker, and I'm just going to kind of touch it in a few spots with the darker blue, just like that. So not a lot. Line it up. Like, isn't that just stunning? Hey, like, wow, wow, wow. Okay, so some of these cards I did the cabin in red, some I did in brown, some I did in blue. And so for this one, I'm going to do this cabin in red. So just taking my pen, oh, and I kind of went over. So I'm just going to wipe that off with my finger. Okay, there's the red cabin. Make sure it's lined up here. And look at that, it's coming together so fast. So now some of these bottom little pathways, the little rock bridge, I did with gray, and some I did with brown. Like you can do either way, like they look so good. So I'll go with gray this time. So again, I take the light gray, and so I even go up into my trees a little bit with it, just to add like a little bit of a shadow kind of dimension to it. Then I come over that bridge with my light gray. So I'm covering the whole area with the light gray first. Isn't that beautiful? I like, actually, it's kind of got like a blue hue to it almost, hey? Just because of the blue water, I like it. All right, so I'm gonna use a darker gray now, and you can also see where I kind of added that gray up in here, right? It added a little bit of shading. So I'm gonna do the same thing with this darker gray now. And so I'm not gonna do it all in the exact same spots as the light gray, right? I'm gonna kind of come into some different areas with the darker gray, and the same over this bridge area, right? I don't wanna do the whole area, the whole bridge. I want to just accentuate, just barely touching the stamp and kind of scraping it against the edge there. Okay, so now I'm going to stamp. Oh, see my paper shifted. Make sure that's in the corner and stamp. Wow, hey, wow, wow, wow. Now I'm going to take the black, and again, I'm going to just add it in a few areas now. Just accentuating a tiny little bit, like you can see on there, hey, like I'm barely adding it. And if I add too much, use my finger and smudge it off. Make sure my paper's in the corner, line that up. And see how that black just added, hey, just kind of gave it a bit of a punch. So I like to take even a little bit of the brown and just kind of accentuate this little door here on my cabin. I could accentuate these little doors on my cabin. Just add a little bit there. Okay, paper's in the corner. And doesn't that look great? Hey, that looks cool. Okay, so that is it. I am done stamping already with this image, which is just fantastic. So what I do next is I take my baby wipe and give my stamp a clean. So what I like to do is I have a thing, I like to do 10 cards at a time. And especially for something like this, like if I'm doing like thank you cards and stuff, I don't do that many at a time. But when I'm doing Christmas cards, I do 10 at a time because I usually send out about 100 Christmas cards. And so so what I would do is I would do all of the stamping with the markers and do all the coloring first. Then I clean my stamp and then I do the Versamark. So what I've done is I've used a clear Versamark, and with a clean stamp, I've Versamarked the whole thing. Make sure this is right into the corner, and now stamp the whole thing over top with Versamark. So I haven't moved the paper, I haven't moved the stamp. I'm keeping it so that it's going to go right on top of that image. Okay, so now I can set my stamp aside, and I like to put my embossing powder into a container so that it's easy to just pick up my image and dust the powder right on top of it. Okay, top off the excess. All right, and then let's heat set that. So put this aside. And when you're heat setting it, you can see how it's kind of got like a foggy image because of the powder. And then wherever the heat gun hits it, and you know it's set, it's because it brightens the image back up. So I know that that is set because of the brightness. It goes glossy as well because I used a clear embossing powder. I love embossing powders because you can use all different colors and textures, but clear is definitely my favorite because I can do techniques like this and it just really helps to pop the image. Okay, that is done. So now I'm going to just set these here so you can see them on the camera. I'll put them over here like that. Okay. And so now what I did is I took my stamp and I just stamped it onto a piece of cardstock. okay, just with some gray ink. And then I cut out this bottom section. So I just line up that corner and that corner, and now I have a mask for the bottom of my image, okay? So I take that piece, lay it on top of my image, just matching up that corner right there and matching up this hill right here, okay? Then I'm going to use a few colors of Distress oxides. And I love oxides because they have such a beautiful flow to them, and they're just so soft and gentle. Now, I always start on outside images when I'm adding a bit of color, and I do lots of circular motion with my ink. Now, one thing I didn't do very well, and I certainly could, is I could mask more of my trees so that these colors in here stay white, right? You can see how they stayed all white in here. And so what I should have actually done, because I was doing 10 cards, is I should have stamped it, and then I should have cut out the trees as well so that all that area stays white, right? It just helps it to look more snowy if you can see the white in behind. So I do try to be careful and not get too much ink in behind there, but you know what? I don't always succeed, and I'm not really going for absolute perfection. So I try to avoid the trees, but sometimes I get a little bit of ink in there. So you could certainly do it the other way and mask it off, and I think you would probably love that too. Okay, so that second color I used was saltwater taffy. The first one was seedless preserves, and now I'm using a little bit of fossilized amber. So I'm just going to fill in my areas with this yellow. And so see how I always start on the edge, right? I started on the bottom, start on the top edge, and just do a real soft circular motion, just filling in and adding that color. Okay, so you can see how I'm trying to avoid the white in here, but not totally getting it. So I can come back and just go, you know what, I just need a little bit more color, just really soft and blending here. Okay, so that, ooh, I'm gonna add a little bit more right there. That's it. That's as easy as that was, okay? So I've got this beautiful stamped image that's ready to basically go on my card. So what I like to do as well, just to add like a little bit of texture, a little bit of speckles, is you can take a paintbrush or a splatter brush and just flick some white or some water onto your stamped image because of this Distress oxide. So what it does is you can actually see like the little spots that go on there, okay? So I actually love using this product, Sheer Shimmer Craft Spray, and it's in Sparkle. And so what I do is I take it and I give it a little bit of a spritz. And sometimes I'll even take it, open it up, and just tap it a little bit so that I get some bigger spots, little bigger, like little circles, right? So that it looks like snow falling down on this image. I just love it. So there, just like that. Now I also took, because I just wanted a little extra shimmer, I took a little bit of this Shimmer Craft and I just poured it out onto my craft mat, used a paintbrush, and just added a little bit to my snowy area so that it had a little bit of a shimmer onto it as well. So lastly, I take the image, stamp a sentiment, and I heat set it with the clear embossing powder as well. So I just use VersaFine Black Onyx ink and then use my clear powder to set that. I stamped inside as well. I did not heat set inside, but beautiful stamp set. This is also from Penny Black called Hope of Promise. Both those stamps came from there. And then lastly, I mat it onto some cardstock and put it onto a card front. So there you go. You can see the gorgeous different varieties of cards that I've done. I've got one with a blue cabin, a red, there's some brown. So this is done with the Distress markers. And these ones here, actually no, this is Distress. These two are Distress markers. and these two are the Tombow. So works just as well. Absolutely love, love, love working with they're not Tombows, they're the Steadtlers markers. So hope you enjoyed that.